Good morning. It's Lisa with Lisa Heal Yourself, and today we're going to discuss, I'm just going to ramble about some of the things that I'm really worried about moving forward this year. Why am I so worried? First and foremost, that we need to have our own personal autonomies, freedoms, liberties, and I fear that those are being eroded under the guise of public health, under the guise of for the greater good. But we cannot afford to lose these personal rights and freedoms. I'm also worried because I think that over the last 2 years, people have divided on each other. We already know that we always look for a bad guy in any situation. In a war, we look to the bad guy. In a pandemic, we look for the bad guy. Unfortunately, the bad guy wasn't the illness. The bad guy was the anti-vaxxers. So we look for bad guys. After the events of the last couple of years and things that are really coming to the forefront in the last while, the truckers' protest in Canada, inspiring, many protests across the world. Also in the United States, a truckers' convoy set to be in DC in the next day. So there's a lot of uprising. There's a lot of people sort of waking up, looking around and realizing that democratic countries or democracy is a bit of a sham, which is really hard. It's hard to wrap your mind around. And it feels like you're living in a conspiracy theory world. And it feels like people are divided more than ever. Because what's happened in the last even month, right? Everything going on in Canada and the Emergencies Act being invoked, and then him rescinding it, with all the debates going on in the House of Commons and then the Senate, and this rescinding, and everybody, the freezing of the bank assets, and him really going after financial institutions, trying to cut his own citizens off at the knees, really, which backfired on him because there was a massive bank run, which led to him recalling the Emergencies Act before it was even approved in the Senate. So he implemented a force on the ground in Ottawa. He said it wasn't the army, but it was an army-like force, with batons and tear gas and all kinds of things, right? I saw it on the live streams. I saw the injuries. I saw people. I saw what happened. And he enacted this Emergencies Act, before it was even passed through the House and before it was even approved by Senate. So it wasn't even legally ratified before he brought the troops, let's call them, or cops, or whatever you want to call these men. I mean, you see for yourself when you see the live streams. And, he didn't have the power to do that, but yet he went ahead and he did it. He went ahead and froze bank accounts of people who were associated or leaders of the convoy, of people who had their trucks parked on Wellington. He seized their trucks, seized their assets, seized their bank accounts, so they can no longer feed their families, pay their bills, pay their mortgages. Now, whether you like the truckers or not, this should really alarm you. This should seriously alarm you, because we are treating citizens, civilians, who have a different view, a dissenting view, an opposite narrative to those in power. And instead of embracing and supporting our democratic rights to speak out, to be able to protest, to disagree, the Prime Minister has now gone after these people in such a threatening way, criminalizing them, right? Throwing people in jail, seizing trucks, seizing assets, and freezing bank accounts, that truly he's labeled these people domestic terrorists, domestic extremists, calling them all sorts of names. Now, when you use words like extremists and terrorists, And then you have it spun in the news media, which you pay for, which you subsidize to, support your narrative. And when this blankets throughout your country, and you find an enemy, but an enemy within your country that is not the enemy, it's very, very disconcerting, because if they can do that to truckers who've been driving trucks for the last 2 years, delivering every single good and service that came to your door to help us all through this pandemic, if they can do that to these hardworking citizens who pay taxes, who follow the rules, who do everything right, but just have a different opinion and want to be heard and wanted to be heard, and the protest was even peaceful. There was no violence. There was no act of violence. There was no fires set or cars flipped over or windows smashed. The only violence was that brought on by the police. When you can have governments doing this, even, going after, for instance, YouTube and Facebook and all these different online platforms to shut people down with dissenting views, we are in trouble. We are in real trouble. And no matter what you think of the truckers, no matter what you think of a protest, no matter what you think of Trudeau, if you can't open up your eyes and see this, by the time you do, it will be too late. If we can do this to a group of our own citizens, we can do it to anyone, and we will do it to anyone. And the fact that he used these powers before they were even approved by the House, before this whole Emergencies Act was even ratified, I don't know what that means, right? What about the people who got hurt in the protesters, the lady who got trampled, the people who got the batons used, the people who got their bank assets frozen or their trucks vandalized and towed, and all of this stuff? Was that legal? The banks who he granted immunity to because you didn't need a court order to be able to just turn off someone's bank account. Is that legal? Because it wasn't even passed in the Senate. Can these people now sue the government? That's yet to be determined. But all we do know is that there's so many crazy things going on. And then we have so many things going on in the United States, right? And the trucker convoy is set to go there. There's so much going on. We have Russia invading Ukraine and NATO getting involved. And there is so much geopolitical tension. There's so much geopolitical finances. There's so many agendas at play here that it is hard to keep up. I do want to touch on the World Economic Forum, which I know is a hot topic, which is a trigger word, which is a word that can get you censored, but I don't see why. It is an organization. It's a global organization who has leaders that have graduated from it in our Canadian cabinet, including Prime Minister Trudeau, including Chrystia Freeland, who just froze the bank accounts, including, as Klaus Schwab himself says, half the cabinet of Canada. They have their own agenda. He's written his own book. If you haven't yet read The Great Reset, it's not a conspiracy theory. Go read the book. His latest book, The Great Narrative, go read it. This should give everybody some clues into the global agenda that's coming our way, right? With the global digitization of passports, of vax passports, of digital ID, of the new digital currency that they want. So when you look at what the World Economic Forum is trying to create, which is a global community, which sounds good on the surface, okay? There's a lot of benefits to digital ID, to digital currency, to digital surveillance, right? To digital censorship. There's a lot of benefits. But if these aren't properly and very, 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 very carefully implemented with laws first, each country must have their laws in place that uphold, right? The Constitution, that uphold the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. If we don't set laws in place and we just go forward, if our nation follows the World Economics agenda and goes to digital ID, goes to digital surveillance, goes to digital currency, without proper laws in place, they can do anything to you whenever they want. if you're dissenting on a certain issue, if you don't like the government in power, if Trump gets in next and you hate him, but and you don't like what he's doing and you want to voice that, I mean, all around the world, if this goes on, any person in power, and it's not always going to be the party you like in power, if you dissent against that, if you have a problem with that, if you want to discuss it, debate it online, you can be shut off, shut down. You cannot be allowed to travel. You cannot be allowed to get on a plane, maybe not be given a mortgage, not be allowed to pay your bills, shut off your bank accounts. I mean, really, digital surveillance and digital access to everything about you, including access to control your money and your bank accounts, your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, your opinions, your medical choices. When we give this power to the government, if you don't see this yet, go read the book. Go look at the World Economic Forum website. I mean, a lot of it on the surface sounds good. Who benefits? Look at who benefits. Follow the financial trail and you will find out why these are coming into place. The power has shifted, the monetary benefit, all the financial gain has shifted in the last, power has shifted in the last couple of years to the companies, to the people in power, right? To the elites, to the billionaires. Pfizer's making more money, right? The tech companies are making more money. Facebook, Amazon, Pfizer, everybody, the pharmaceutical companies, big agri, big tech. The middle class is evaporating. The middle class is losing the money. The poor are getting poor. The middle class is losing, but the rich, the corporate rich are getting rich. Now, when you have corporations, okay, this is a true definition. When you have corporations and government directing policies together and working hand in hand to govern their people, this is called a fascist country. You can have a fascist dictator in government, right? A fascist country is where you have the government and big business making decisions for the people. So the interests of big business and the corporate interests are put ahead of the people. And that is what we're seeing now. We're seeing this. I mean, this is not, back in the day when we criticize all these countries for being dictatorships or fascists or even communists. These ideologies are creeping in. And if we go forward, under the direction of the World Economic Forum, under the direction of the elite billionaires, under the direction of big corporations, of big business, big agri, big pharma, big tech, and government, big media, right? When they all collude together to push a certain narrative and agenda, and we have any dissent, any disobedience, any disapproval, any disagreement with this publicly or otherwise, and you can be punished financially, you can be punished socially, you can be punished politically, you can be punished in all the ways that hurt you and your family. So therefore, we do lose our rights, and we will lose them quickly, especially if this comes on a global scale, right? Especially when we use geopolitical wars and everything that goes along with that to also push power, push finances, push corporate, who wins in these situations? The big companies, the people making money, the governments, the people. And right now it's the scariest because they're using our tax dollars to push something that literally is going to take away our personal rights and freedoms forever, for our children, for our grandchildren. So if you're not seeing this yet and you don't understand this yet, it's time that we all start waking up, writing to the people in power saying, I don't want to see these laws pushed through, because as we've seen for the last 2 years, once emergency powers come into use, once they're allowed to push things through, they rarely give it up. They rarely give up their power. And you may like it in the case of COVID because you might be deathly afraid of COVID and getting it and dying. And so you've gone along with it, right? But what about the next thing to come down the pipe? What about the next pandemic? What about the warfare, the finances, the digital ID, the digital currency? What about when the banks collapse? What about when they force you to switch over to digital currency and you lose the value of everything that you've worked for your whole life? Because cash no longer means anything, because fiat currency no longer means anything, because the banks have the power to just turn that into digital currency, move inflation around to what suits them, and you lose your value, you lose your place. You may not be able to pay your mortgages. Big companies like BlackRock and other entities who are buying up all these homes are buying up the middle class. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is happening. Go look it up. Go look up Vanguard. Go look up BlackRock. Go look them up. Look them up. See what's happening. People are going to be losing their homes because they won't be able to afford them. Big corporations are going to come in, take them away. The mission, the statement that the World Economic Forum says right on their own website, you will own nothing and be happy. You will own nothing and be happy. So you will own not your own home anymore because BlackRock will come in, they will buy it up, they will rent back to you. Your money won't have as much value. You will be under the scrutiny, under the surveillance digitally of what you say online, who you talk to, what you're doing, your social. You will be given a social credit score, much like they do in China. Are you allowed to get a loan? Are you allowed to leave the country? Are you allowed to vote? Are you allowed to do anything? Do we consider you a domestic terrorist? Do we consider you an extremist? Do we consider you a threat? Do we consider you having a dissenting opinion? Do we consider you not going along with the narrative in any way, which way, or form? And watch what happens. Some people are going to be bolstered up. Some people are going to go down. You're going to have no choice. I mean, this is what China deals with. This is what we've spent our history trying to avoid. Putting in the Constitution, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and making sure that we have a true democracy, making sure that we have our freedoms and rights and those are protected. Going forward in this way, we will have technocrats leading our nations. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know everything, but neither do you. There's so much going on. There has been so much going on leading up to this, right? There's political things, there's social things, there's medical things. I mean, it's all coming together. And if you can't see the big picture yet, please do your research. Please try to wake up before it's too late, before you can't find this information online, before you aren't literally, before they pull it all and you won't be able to find it. Before you're controlled, before your every move is surveilled and controlled, and before our children are living in a world that isn't the same world we grew up in. I don't want to fearmonger. I don't want to put fear out there. I think there's a solution to this, and the solution is truth. The solution is waking up. The solution is spreading the information around. The way that we can solve this is to all of us spread love. All of us spread truth. All of us do what we can to be good people, to vote with our dollars, to have peace in our own communities and our own families, to act peaceful towards other people, to be free, to have peace, if we make it an individual calling for each individual, right? Because these are just people, these are just leaders, they're all the same as you and me. They just happen to be in power. They happen to be the one making the decisions. They happen to be the one controlling the corporations. You know, if we all take personal responsibility and rise up, there's so many more citizens and civilians than there are these elite people making the decisions, these people at the top. And so it's important that we treat others with love, with respect, with caring, with empathy, standing for our own freedom, standing for our own rights, protecting ourselves and each other, finding ways to work out our problems on an individual level, right? When we do that at the smaller level, we can bring that to the world stage. We can bring that forward. I think one of the most important things we can do right now is just to be aware, to be open, to start to see, and use your power where you have it. You know, we don't have any power over this war. Doesn't matter. We don't have any power over so many things going on in the world right now. You know, the power has been taken out of our hands, but we do have power for some things, and we must use our power where we have it. We must put our power to use where we have it, to vote with our dollar, to protect our own assets, to protect our own interests, to protect our own freedoms, to protect our own rights. We still have these powers right now. We haven't lost them yet. It's important that we exercise them, that we don't sit back, that we're not too afraid, that we're not worried about being judged or criticized or being wrong or being embarrassed or being shunned or anything, that we use the power that we have to help make this world a better place right now while we still can. So again, this has been a rambling video. I just needed to get a lot of things off my chest this morning. It's overwhelming. It is overwhelming. The fear is thick. The division is thick. The conspiracy theories that are not so much conspiracy theories anymore are thick. And the censorship is thick. There's a lot going on in the world. We need to be able to see it before it's too late. And we need to be able to exercise our rights and freedoms where we still can. And when we work together to really make a better world for the children, to really make a better world for ourselves, we improve it for everyone. We keep democracy in place. We keep freedoms in place. And that spreads throughout the world. So that's what we can do. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. I think we really need to look at mind-body healing and our spirituality and what we can do on this level, because that also impacts the world as well as heals our own bodies and souls. So we'll be talking about that more, and I'll see you in the next video.